Hey everyone, on today's video I'm going to go over how you can order a prop like this one, and you can modify it, drilling your own holes, modifying the model in Xlights to create a more dense prop. With a more dense prop you'll have additional pixels that will allow you to do additional things, and the first thing I would recommend starting with is going inside Xlights and you can modify the model data. So let's go inside and we'll show you how to do that. In order to modify the data, you first have to put the prop in. So you can click the download a prop option and this will open up all of the available models. We ordered the hearts from Bostick, and the hearts we ordered are the 24-inch single ring. Go ahead and you can say insert model, and here is what it looked like when we first got it. You can come over to the model data over here and click these three dots. This will open up this window, and this is what tells Xlights which LED or which pixel is associated with which prop, where they're all located, and all of that. So if you look very closely at this, they are not totally symmetrical on each side. I ended up going through and I modified this so it was symmetrical, and then after that you can add this active and auto increment. The last one starts at or ends at 30, so I would change this to 31, and then I basically just went through and started to add these different numbers throughout the prop until I filled it up, made sure everything was even and properly spaced, and the final result looks like this. So open this up. And as you can see, it is symmetrical up and down, left and right, and it creates this kind of mini heart inside to create more of a matrix effect inside this heart. And that allows me to do additional effects and things like that that I wouldn't normally have the option to do. When it comes time to actually wiring the prop, you can right click on the prop, click on wiring view, and this will show you exactly how you need to wire up the prop. So you can see it starts by following the outside edge, and then from there basically just comes up and creates a zigzag pattern until it gets to the end. Once you're pushing the pixels into the prop, you'll follow this pattern, and unless you have a custom string of 114 pixels, you'll probably have to join some strings or pixels together, and I have more details on that later in this video. Alright, now that that is done, what we can do is hook this up to a projector, and we can project this image onto the actual prop. That way we will be able to see where all the pixels should be, so we can drill them out. Alright, so now that that's done, you have your prop and you have all of the holes marked, ready to be drilled. You can use standard little step bit like so, and this will allow you to drill out the prop. I do recommend having some type of table or backing, and then once you are ready, you can just start drilling the holes.
So now that we have our prop all drilled out, you can start installing pixels. But in our case, I want to paint these so that way they have a nice aesthetic pleasing during the day. And to do that, you want to make sure that you use some type of cleaning agent. And once you have cleaned it, let it dry, you can start the priming. All right, so next up, we are going to prime the hearts. Once we've primed it, then we can put on our base color. All right, so now the primer for this one's dry. This base coat should be good, so we'll add another coat. All right, now we gotta wait for these to dry. All right, so now we're ready for hopefully the last coat. Alright, so now we just gotta wait for these to dry. Alright, so what we've done is we push all of the pixels in, and now we need to wire things up. So after you put the pixels in, you'll have areas where you need to extend the wiring, and when you have to do that, it's usually a good idea to add any of your power injection. You can add any special connector you want. In our case, we're using the ws connectors, but this could be Xconnect or any others. And then once we do that, we'll add the power injection wire. We'll have the plug at the beginning for the input. We'll have the plug at the end for the output. And then we will have our power injection wire. Let me show you how we would go about wiring this up. So the ws connector is just your standard 3-wire connector. It is waterproof. It has a ground wire, which is this black one, has yellow, which is usually used for data, and then red, which is your positive DC voltage. And then we're using these automotive style connectors, which are also waterproof, and we're using these for the power injection. And then instead of adding multiple connectors at each of these points, what I usually do is use this 18x4 shielded security wire, and I will connect it from everywhere I need to join power. So over here at the output, I'll start it here. We need to connect these, so I'll add it here. The end of the string goes here, and then we also have another break over here, so I'll add it over here. This will group the pixels together and create a uniform color throughout the prop, no matter whether we're using white, red, pink, any of the colors that we use. The coloring will stay the same because the voltage will be consistent throughout the prop. We don't need to do it at the very beginning because the data is going to, when the power and the data wire come in, it is supplying that voltage. But you certainly could go all the way to the beginning if you want. So we'll kind of line that up, get kind of a rough estimate of how much wire we need. And then this part is excess. And then right here, this is the beginning of the prop. And you know that because this has the arrow right here, and the arrow points to the direction of the data flow. So you got to be careful when you put the pixels in that it goes in the same direction as what Xlights tells you. That's really one of the only gotchas you got to pay attention to when you are actually pushing the pixels into the prop. So let's go strip this off. And then on this, it may be difficult to see, but there is a striped line, and then there is a line with text on it, and then there is the wire in the middle, which is just solid black. The one in the middle is your data, the striped line is ground, and the one with words on it is going to be your positive voltage. And they sell these solder sleeves, and basically what these are is a heat shrink tube with some solder in the middle. This provides weatherproofing and is extremely convenient when you need to connect lots of different wires to get together, like in this case where we have multiple groups that we have to connect. This will just shorten the time to get all of that done. The same thing applies with the connector. They'll have the 3 wires, and you'll just make sure that the stripe goes to the stripe, words to words, solid black to solid black. In my case, when I can, I also like to use the heat shrink that also has glue in it, which just gives it some extra waterproofing. Sometimes, like in the middle sections, I won't be able to use this, but when I can, I certainly like to use these. When you're putting the wires together in these solder tubes, you want to make sure that the wire stays relatively loose. You don't want to spin it real nice and tight like you might be traditionally used to doing when you solder. You want them to be loose so that way they kind of interconnect and grab each other, and then the solder will melt around that connection and make it more secure. And then you're going to take a heat gun and just gently start applying heat uniformly across them. And then you want to let this cool. This is still sensitive, and if you pull on it, you can certainly pull this apart until the solder dries or cools. Alright. And then I want to join these together, and I want to add a connection point there for power injection. What we'll do is basically just strip a little bit of this protective coating back. In our case, I am using 18x4 shielded security wire. I've noticed that there are lots of different wire used for this hobby. I found that this particular wire does really well at allowing data to go farther than in other traditional wires, and I attribute that to having the extra shielding so it doesn't run into as many interference issues. In our case, this is going a really small distance and won't really be impacted by that, but when I buy the wire in bulk, I just buy the 500 or 1,000 foot spools, and then I can use it for things like this or other runs. So now we have the power or the data wire connected, but we still have to do the powers. And we're using this 18x4 wire. So there are 4 wires. We only need 2 of them. So what I typically do is I will double up the power and the ground. If I'm doing an extension, then I'll usually just double up the ground, and that leaves me with 1 power and 1 data. So in this case, this wire is a little bit thicker, so we'll use the thicker of the solder tubes. In this case, it's going to be blue. And what we'll typically do, or what I'll typically do, is figure out which one's positive, which one's negative, and then I will slide in the tube. And then I'll slide in the ground. And you want to make sure that the wire is lined up so that way the copper is where the solder is going to be. That will make sure that it melts uniformly over all the wire and gives you a nice solid connection. And you can see me kind of twisting this a little bit. I do twist it to make sure that it goes in there, but it is not wound very tight. That allows it to get that kind of better connection. All right, so now those are together, and you just want to make sure that the wire doesn't pull out, because as it starts to shrink, it will kind of move a little bit. So you just want to kind of be mindful of that. So now this one is nice and connected. We can jump around to the next spot. And this is what your final project would look like, and this is going to be your power injection point. This will be your data output. This will be your data input. The only thing that's left is you'll need some way to mount it. So I'll drill one additional hole to use the magnet mounts that we use to mount these on the house, and I'll go grab that and we'll show you how to do that part, and then we can hang it and make sure everything works. One other thing that you may run into from time to time is if you forget the nut that screws and holds them together, something you can do is take your heat gun, heat this up, slide it on, and then you can screw it into another one of the connectors so that way it will retain its shape. Let me show you how to do that real quick. And it should be fairly pliable in your hand, and then you'll just slide it back on. You can see it will slide back on, and then to make sure that it retains its shape and can be screwed in, you want to screw it in while it cools to another adapter or plug. So this will screw together, this will cool. Once this cools, you can unscrew it. So last up, they sell these magnet mounts, and basically it is just a Phillips screw with a special adapter, and this side is a magnet. So you would drill out a hole, connect the two of these, and then this would use a washer that is then screwed in or mounted somewhere, and it will allow you to hang the prop that way. So I gotta drill the holes for these, and then we can go outside and hang them up. In retrospect, I should have done this before I painted these, but I forgot about this. The last you do that, you'll have a nice secure way to mount this, and this will just magnetically hang. You'll have your input over here, the output over here, and you'll be good to go. Let's go hang this outside and make sure it works. All right, so we have the hearts up on the house. Everything's working as expected. The submodels are all designed and it is ready for our show. We hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, and let us know what you'd like to see us cover next.